My name is Karen Harding. I'd like to take this opportunity to present some concepts to you that I have referred to in a research paper. We're going to be talking today about the concept of plural governance, the governance of safety concept, indigenous policing models, indigenous governance and nodal leadership, and building economic partnerships with indigenous communities to lift well-being. These are accompanied subchapters and sections within my Chapter 5 of my research paper. Chapter 5 is titled Time for New Justice Governance, and we've been talking in Chapter A about how to achieve good governance, and these are some ways to include the voices of Indigenous peoples so that we can actually move forward in governance issues to address the issues in rural and remote communities as they affect disadvantaged populations. And I'm going to be applying these concepts further in the paper to how we can help Maori in New Zealand to achieve increased prosperity, improved access to justice and increased well-being by embracing a wellness concept. And to start with it, we need to discuss how these things work in practice and initiatives that have been developed overseas. So looking at this section of my research paper, which is titled Re-engineering Rural Justice in New Zealand, Problem-Solving Justice in Action, a Charter Court Solution for Opotiki and Tūhoe. I'm now moving on to Section A, Subsection 1, the concept of plural governance. An international trend in the 21st century is to enter an age of plural governance. This is a move beyond a centralised Western top-down state governance over the safety and well-being of Indigenous populations within disadvantaged communities. Plural governance opens a way to respect cultural differences, build inclusiveness and social cohesion, increasing Indigenous well-being and safety in their communities. This allows Indigenous populations to regain political influence and to exert influence over their people. The concept of plural governance enables local and Indigenous participation with justice processes framed in a procedurally fair and culturally appropriate manner. The aim is to produce a more therapeutic outcome than current approaches. There is still only one law in a country for all. 2. The governance of safety concept. The shift towards plural governance involves a change in the naming culture from crime prevention to community safety. Community safety being a broader encompassing strategies, initiatives, practices and tools developed with Indigenous peoples to improve the well-being of communities. This framework recognises the complexity of issues arising from colonisation, dispossession, assimilation and the present-day problems of marginalisation, inequality, systematic racism and discrimination. The safety of Indigenous peoples, including Maori and rural communities, requires measures beyond seeking crime reduction. Reducing crime is just one indicator of community safety and well-being, alongside other factors such as high rates of educational achievement, employment, health, housing, access to justice, political representation, socio-economic factors and parenting abilities within a particular area. The governance of safety concept aims to improve the well-being and safety of Indigenous peoples worldwide. This recognises Indigenous peoples' role in identifying justice issues, taking ownership of them, and in policing. This involves establishing community partnerships that respect and value different types of knowledge based on equality and trust. Trust is coin of the realm. Encouraging engagement in the legal process with mutual respect enhances trust in the justice system to turn the tide against disenfranchisement in rural and remote communities servicing disadvantaged populations. 3. Indigenous policing models. Indigenous policing models have been developed internationally, responding to place-specific needs reflective of the historical nature of relationships between Indigenous peoples and the police. This movement developed in a country-specific context, taking into account the colonial policies and experiences of institutional or systematic racism. Indigenous policing models have been utilised in countries such as Australia, South Africa, Mexico and Norway. The aim of Indigenous policing is to improve the relationship between the police and Indigenous peoples. Indigenous police models recognise the historical injustices that have occurred against Indigenous peoples. It recognises policing methods which are not culturally sensitive lead to fear and mistrust among Indigenous peoples. Indigenous policing aims to address the problem of insufficient police protection of Indigenous peoples residing in rural and remote areas, including reservations. Indigenous policing seeks to provide improved responses to local Indigenous community concerns. It does this by providing Indigenous peoples directly in policing activities and by providing training and employment. 4. Indigenous governance and nodal leadership. Indigenous governance is a concept that relies on networks of kin support, the connection to ancestral lands as a source of identity, livelihood, and strength of Indigenous peoples, as well as cultural and spiritual teachings. Indigenous governance also involves concepts of nodal leadership. This leadership model is founded on Indigenous social constructs and culturally based systems and institutions. A nodal network of leaders can form a network of governance across regions and communities to achieve common goals. Indigenous community leaders with social capital and developed enduring webs of relationships are in a position to get things done through mobilising alliances and resources. Such leaders have authority gained through respect, kin, marriage, and complex personal and group networks. These leaders have personal qualities demonstrating an ethic of care and can extend their leadership domain through engagement with other leaders and groups. This is network governance. 5. Building economic partnerships. A strategy to lift Indigenous living and well-being conditions in economically deprived communities is to raise Indigenous employment rates through improving the economic base of the community. This can be achieved through building sustainable economic partnerships between Indigenous groups and industry, the focus being on enterprise development, developing Indigenous business opportunities, and working with industry to counteract labour shortages. In Western Australia, there has been a move away from passive welfare models towards active participation and mutual obligation. Case studies show partnership initiatives between industry and government designed to assist and uplift local communities with disadvantaged populations in remote locations have been successful. Formalised partnerships between the state government and industry concerning Indigenous economic development have been formed with the intent to build sustainable, prosperous communities that enable Indigenous people to take up social, employment and business opportunities in mining regions. The resource industry has funded the development of programs in schools to provide job readiness and training, addressing barriers to enable Indigenous people to succeed in the industry. Programs have been successfully developed in Western Australia with major employers such as Rio Tinto Iron Ore. Work Start programs target long-term unemployed to achieve work readiness. Literacy training is provided and other skills in an adult learning environment. Programs such as On My Way have been developed to assist Indigenous youth to stay out of trouble with the police. It teaches strategies for self-development and provides positive role models. The program utilises behaviour contracts as a tool to engage youth to stay out of police trouble by providing incentives and rewards for positive behaviour. Aspirational programs lift Aboriginal educational achievements and enable transition into apprenticeships. There are also Indigenous school and university scholarships being offered and cadetships. We're now moving into the next subsection, Chapter B, Applying Indigenous Governance Concepts to New Zealand. Thank you for your time. I hope you find that reasonably interesting. I look forward to building on the concepts to design my model court for reform here in New Zealand, utilising some of these concepts. I intend to focus on increasing the community involvement in local courts within a community and bringing the court into the community.